Think about it as if you got 100 units of energy gets given to you a day. And if 40 of those units of energy are utilized for your kids, for your pets, for your friend, for your neighbor, because you're always monitoring if he puts his trash cans on your side of the driveway, or all these silly little things where think of it as you're giving pieces of your power away, your energy that can be moving your locomotive forward for your projects, your passions forward. It gets so diluted and so spread out that sometimes when I look at people's energy, it just looks like you're pouring water on a tabletop. It just goes in every direction at once. And of course, nothing's moving forward. It's way too diluted. And so what I start asking those clients is start recalling your energy. I'll have them close their eyes and I'm like, think of people that you sent your energy out to where you're more invested than they are in the result. Start pulling that energy back like a retractable vacuum cleaner cord. Just pull it back, and people usually take a deep breath when they start getting more of their own capacity back. Because they're calling their energy home and then making more conscious decisions about, is this where I want to invest my energy? And is it what I'm being asked to do or what I just think I should do to be the good wife, girlfriend, neighbor, daughter?
You're literally teaching us self-healing.
Yes.
In
the truest sense.
In
right?
the multidimensional capacity,
Yes.
not just the physical vessel, but like our spirit, soul, ego, higher self, all of it goes together and all of it belongs so that I feel whole in a way where I didn't even know that wholeness could be felt in this way. Oh my goodness, Christine, I'm really happy that you are here. We've been talking a lot before I hit record, and I'm so excited for my audience and for our viewers to get to know you. So welcome to Fire and Soul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to talking to you.
Oh, it's so cool. And, I kind of teased a little bit, especially for those of you catching this on the YouTube. I was recently invited as a guest speaker, and you were invited as a guest as well for TLC, the Transformation Leadership Council. And we were in New Orleans together, and that's how we connected, although you connected to my energy long before I actually connected with you in the physical. But you are the person that I have talked about a couple times now that helped me clear my energy that night. Coming back from the bar / restaurant / club thing happening on Bourbon Street and or in the French Quarter, wherever we were. And and you helped clear. So I want to just kind of drop in right there of how you learned how to do that. And we're going to circle back to what happened for me in the hotel lobby in that point. But I mean, you went to USC Law School, for goodness sakes. And now here you are, one of the most beautiful channels, authentic, high integrity, about to be explosive on the scene with your book that's about to come out. And so how did you discover your gifts in the first place?
Well, I sort of roll my eyes when people say, oh, I always knew from the time I was 2 years old, I was super special, because that was not my story at all. I was raised like a regular human muggle, out in the regular world, taught to worship, money and power, like most people. And I went to law school in Southern California, and in law school, I developed allergies. And it wasn't asthma, but it was upper respiratory, just constant runny nose, blowing my nose, sneezing. I sounded like the sick kid all the time, which was obnoxious. And back then, it was before the days of Zyrtec and the things that they have now that are non-drowsy. So my options were take Benadryl and drink Diet Coke to stay awake in my classes, or walk around with a box of tissues. And after a while, I was like, that's enough. There's got to be something else. And I started studying what was then called alternative medicine. And I started studying homeopathy, and working with homeopathic remedies. I got rid of about 50% of my allergies. And as you know, the universe will leave a little trail of breadcrumbs for you. So I'm like, okay, I'm on the right path. And I made the link between my stress and allergies, more stress, more allergies. So I started doing Tai Chi and yoga, and eventually learned to meditate when I started studying Buddhism and Taoism. And in my Tai Chi instructor at one point said, you should learn Reiki because, you're seeing energy. I'm like, no, I'm a lawyer. I don't do woo-woo. I'm not seeing energy. So she convinced me. And when I took the class and I offered my friends an energy treatment, I would say, well, let me come home, take off my lawyer suit to change channels in my brain and just sit and meditate, just to, go from one mode to another. And when I would do that, I would hear a word or a phrase, and I would usher it out, and it would float back in, and I would know it was about the friend I was about to give energy to. And so finally I got up the nerve and I mentioned it to the friend as I'm giving her energy, and her eyes flew open and she's like, how do you know that? That just happened this morning. I'm like, how do I know that? And I realized I'm getting information from somewhere. And the second or third time it happened, there was a different friend, and she's like, who are you talking to get this information? I said, I don't know. And when she left, I went back upstairs and sat in my meditation chair and connected. And I just said, who am I speaking with
Mm,
And this voice said, welcome home. And tears were streaming down my face. And it was my
mm,
spirit. And she said, this is who you came here to be. Get ready. And
mm,
I would just sit in meditation for 3 or 4 hours a day. And she would say, this is what I'm going to show you when somebody has compromised lungs. This is what I'm going to show you when the joint starts to deteriorate. This
mm,
is how stress will manifest in some people in their throat. And she just started kind of training me to see the trail of damage based on how people internalize their stress.
mm,
And that was like 30 years ago. And so
mm,
my friends got better and they told their friends, and a practice was born. And I left the practice of law, and for the last 26 years have been teaching people how to help themselves. But I've also been the translator between people's spirits. And there's my spirit always says, your ego mind yells and your spirit whispers. So
oh,
I'm
so
giving
good.
voice to people's spirit. And so in a session or in my classes, I'm the translator for people's spirits.
It's so beautiful. I'm writing notes right now because there's so much that's already come through. I'm like, wait, I need to pick up that thread and that thread and that thread. Giving voice to your spirit. So good. Okay, so a couple questions because I know
Sure.
this must be on the minds of people watching or listening. You've referenced your spirit as female or feminine. Is there a reason for
Mhm.
that?
Only just to eliminate confusion. So if you're interested in this, if you are listening to this podcast, you've had hundreds of lifetimes. So you have been male and female multiple times. You have been every skin color. You've been all of it, right? We want to sample all the goodness. So I will just refer to the whatever gender the person has incarnated with this time and identifies with, then
Mhm.
I will just refer to your spirit with that same pronoun, just so you're not confused, right?
Okay,
Of
so
who I'm
good. Thank
speaking
you.
with.
Perfect. My spirit definitely feels very female, and you've said that she is. So there it is. But
Yes, there.
but it's probably genderless, is my guess, because spirit is it does not
Yes.
have right, or it's integrated with both.
Right. And I would say if you go kind of up high enough, right? If I'm talking to your spirit and we get into like your guides, and they really feel there's no gender there, right?
Yeah,
The higher the vibration, the more neutral it gets.
that makes so much sense. Okay, my other question was, and this might be what you would consider advanced, but I know my audience is ready for it.
Okay.
What is the distinction between spirit and soul?
So if you picture your soul as a beam of divine light coming down, and it's going to incarnate. And so it's given a body, and it's given
Mhm.
an ego mind, which is like a blank hard drive. And you pick your parents based on what you want, what kind of programming you want in that hard drive, right? So it's like, I want scarcity. So I'm going to pick parents that go bankrupt twice, right? Or I want that. So we choose our parents based on how we want to get our ego mind programmed. But where the soul and the ego mind overlap is your spirit. So you can
Mm.
think of it as like 75% your soul and 25% your ego mind. So it has your personality. When I connect to someone's spirit, like someone like you, your spirit will talk really fast and chatty. And somebody who's really shy or very methodical, their spirit will lay things out to me almost in outline form.
Mm.
Right. And so there's really some of your personality is a reflection of your spirit, your soul.
Okay, my follow-up question on this, because now I'm curious. Is my spirit always the same, irrespective of the incarnation, color of my skin, where I live on the planet, whatever? Like, in other words, does my spirit always talk fast in all my lives, or is that just
No,
this life?
that's this life.
So it's
So
personality dependent.
yes, that's that 20 or 25% of
Mhm.
your spirit that is ego infused.
That makes
So
sense.
if I don't really work as a medium per se, but if somebody's dead relative comes in and talks to me, I will of course convey the message. And how I know how to describe, oh, well, there's a woman here and she's wearing a lot of hats and she's carrying two cats. And like, oh, that's Aunt Sophie. She loved cats. She lived in France, blah, blah. And so there's enough of the residue of that
Mhm.
ego that gets infused in the spirit. And then once she crosses over and fully and is, in spirit form for a long time, she may decide to drop that piece and reincarnate again somewhere else. Right.
Yes. Okay.
So,
Okay. Oh, this is so good. All right. Now let's circle back to when I really became super aware of your gifts because I got to experience it in real time. I'll share the story briefly. We were
okay.
walking, all of us, about, I don't know what, 50, 60 of us from TLC, or as
Yeah.
many wanted to go to a restaurant that was loud with live music and food. And a lot of people love that vibe. I knew it was going to be tough for my sensitive system. And also, I've been
Yeah.
living a lot like a spiritual hermit for about 2.5 years and enjoying
Yeah.
that for the first time. Almost resonating with the term introvert, even though I'm not, so it's just been a big shift for me to say the least. And but I knew that I would just suck it up and go because that was the right thing that I thought I should do. And then about an hour in, I realized I am maxed out. Like I felt
Yeah.
so good going there because I had all that beautiful, vibrant, expansive energy. And all of a sudden I just felt like I was like closing in on myself. My energy was getting smaller and darker and actually sad, but I don't say anything because I'm like, it's just me. Maybe I'm being sensitive and I don't know. And then we
Right.
walk back and I see you doing a clearing from our mutual friend. And then I'm
Mhm.
like, I need that. I need that. And that must have been my spirit saying, I need that. Cause I didn't know
Yes.
what you were.
Yes.
I obviously I believe in all this stuff. I've experienced this stuff, but I didn't know you and I didn't know exactly what you were doing. I was like, can I have one too? And
Yeah.
you turned
Yes.
around, and I'll now leave it for you to share of what you experienced when you turned around and you experienced me.
Yeah. So when what you said is, can I have that too? Because I feel, and you were about to cry. And I said, you don't have to cry because it's somebody else's grief sitting on you. And I could
I
see this
remember.
gray cloud sitting on your lungs.
Yeah.
And we store grief in our lungs, right? So I knew by where it landed on you, where you were holding it and carrying it, that we don't, us energetically sensitive people. And I know you said maybe you're going from extrovert to introvert, and I prefer to think of it on the spectrum of how energetically sensitive and open are you.
Yeah.
When we walked in there, I was like, oh, I am way too open for this crowd, right? Because alcohol sort of loosens people's, boundaries and walls that they have, and all their stuff starts seeping out, and it's messier. And so those sort of loud environments where everybody's kind of pushing at the energy, it's just, you can pick up a lot of stuff there. And you had picked up somebody's grief, and you'd picked up several other things that were they look like these black blobs on you energetically.
Mm.
So I just connected your energy to mine and steadied you, and then just started removing that energy off and cleared it off quickly. And you went, oh, and it was like, and now she's back to her.
Yeah.
You got to have your own energy back, right? And it wasn't being kind of polluted with this other stuff.
It's true. I had never actually experienced that in that way. It felt like you were taking leeches off of me. And every
Yeah.
time you like one, like peel it off, like I was just like, oh, it was like I was a little
Yeah.
lighter again. And then, yeah, it definitely helped me. And there were some other weird things going on in the room. And we all know New Orleans has a lot of sort of dynamic energy, to say the least. But
Yes.
I wasn't aware at that point just how Swiss cheesy I was operating in the world, which then you let me know, like, yes, you cannot do that. You're light. And so I would like for you to share what you were sharing with me that I also know can be a beautiful teaching for our listeners and
Yeah.
viewers, because I believe we have a lot of highly sensitive, evolved beings that listen, right? Multiple lives, many, many lives. And so we are ready for what we know is coming, right? And like we're very aware we want to be a part and contribute on some way into the new earth, golden age era, all of that, which I know you stand for as well.
Yes.
But yet we can't do it if we're incapacitated energetically, if we're
Yeah.
compromised energetically. And so that is the gift that you get to help us self-heal, protect, and then prepare for what we really came
Yeah.
here for in the first place.
Well, and to be able to clear yourself when you pick up stuff that isn't yours, right? Because all it does
Yes.
is limit you. It doesn't even benefit the other person
But
necessarily.
can we stop right there? How does someone know if they've picked anything up?
So how you'll know is by paying attention to how you feel, right? I know if I go to the grocery store and I don't shield my energy, and I get in the car and I'm driving home and I'm yawning and I'm like, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How am I this tired? I'm like, oh, because I'm carrying these heavier vibrations on me. Right. And our
Interesting.
body will register those denser, heavier energies that we might think of as negative energies, or sadness or frustration, or any of the negative emotions. The energy that accompanies those is denser and heavier. So when your vibration starts lowering, your brain assumes, oh, well, we usually vibrate pretty high. If we're dropping, we must be really tired.
This is
And
so
so your
well.
brain registers that as, I'm tired. So I feel tired, I feel heavy, or I feel negative. People who
Mm.
say, wow, all of a sudden I just got in a bad mood, or I got a really dark outlook on something. And I'm like, well, let's clear your energy. And then it's like, bing, their energy rises right back up.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me add
So
something. I'm going to add
yeah.
something to that just to give context here and to put a story to this that I am literally like, wow, that just happened to me. So I'm learning from your brilliance of weaving this for me. I joined a choir, and there's about 200 people in this choir, and I'm so excited to be in this choir. I'm not the greatest singer, but that's the whole point. You don't need to have any experience. There's no auditions. Like the only rule is no shaming of anyone, and especially
Right.
yourself, right? And I love it. And so we had our second rehearsal last week, and I'm like, third row center, like singing loud and proud. And, and I know I can be free because no one's supposed to be judging how I sound. So I'm really free and I'm moving my body and I'm literally feeling so fun. And I turn around and I see arms crossed and I see like, they won't look at me. They certainly won't have eye contact with me. And I was like, oh, am I being too much? Like, I thought we were supposed to have fun, right? So my little girl was like confused, my little like divine inner child. And so then I actually was like, okay, just be a good girl, right? And I started yawning like crazy for the next hour. And I'm like, it's like 7 o'clock. Like I don't get a bit. So I was having a somatic response, and as I was reacting to the environment of a lot of people, and I was allowing for their energy to impact me, and I didn't even know it, and it was expressing through yawn. Is that what you're saying is possible?
Yeah. Well, two things are happening there. One, you're picking up their lower vibration of their frowny, right? Their frowniness is their own like rah, rah, rah kind of energy. But also, if their arms are crossed and they're sort of glaring at you, now they're sending you negative energy.
Yeah, they did not like me being free and happy at all.
Right. Well, and you've heard there's 100 different versions of this statement, but your light is going to make people who are a little darker unhappy, right? It feels it's too much of a gap for them and it makes them uncomfortable. And so then, especially as women, we learn, oh, turn down your light because you don't want to be too much, right? And so instead of go find the people who are happy and vibrating just like you are, right? Which is what more and more of us are doing now of like, oh, instead of just making myself small enough that I don't threaten anybody, I'll go find other empowered, brilliantly sparkly people to hang out with where I can, your vibe attracts your tribe. So if you hold your vibe steady enough, you can attract that tribe to you, but it's also noticing when you're not and going, okay, how do I shield myself and clear myself? And I refer to it as practicing good energy hygiene because your physical body is drawing energy from your energy field all the time. And so if that energy is compromised, it lowers the vibrational quality of what you're pulling into your body.
Yeah.
Right. So there are studies that are done on people who work in hospitals are sick more often. They're like, well, yeah, we're around germs all day. Like, yeah, but people who work in prisons are sick much more often. People who work at the DMV are sick much more often. People who work at places where there's a lot of negative energy get sick more often. Because their energy field, I would describe it as their energy field is so filled with negative energy that it's compromising the energy that goes into their body each day. So now they just live in a weakened state, which of course weakens your immune system.
Yeah. And then you are susceptible to virtually anything. And then if you match that with any level of stress, well, now you just are like, it's going to amplify. Right. Exactly. Okay. I interrupted you and it felt like important because we're like giving so much more context and texture to this amazing. So we're only 20 minutes in and I love it. But let's go back to your like, okay, first be aware of your own energy. Because I was like, how do we know we're Swiss cheese? How do we even become conscious to our own auric or subtle body fields? And I'm not even sure I'm languaging that correctly. So,
That's okay.
So help me out because I'm learning.
I would just say, if you're interested in all of this kind of thing, right? Whether it's energy healing, any sort of spiritual journey, you are an older soul. Now, the neat thing about older souls is they vibrate larger, right? They're in a more expansive field. They vibrate higher. So if you think of the different vibrational states of water, at its lowest thing, it's frozen in an ice cube, and then it's tepid water, and then it's boiling water, and then it's steam. And the steam takes up the most space. Right? It's the highest vibration. So we as humans have evolved the same way. We've all had hundreds of lifetimes. So if you think of it like kindergarten through 12th grade, we've all had the elementary school lifetimes where we thought it was really smart to go carjack and steal the car we wanted and hit the guy on the head because you wanted to take his lawnmower or whatever those physical level lessons were. And then we had maybe 60 lifetimes under our belt. And now we're middle schoolers and we really don't want things. We get the physical rules. You can't do that. Now we want things to make sense mentally and we want to follow these mental rules. And that's where organized religion can come in and different things. And then we get up to be in middle school, end of middle school, 5th to 6th, 7th grade. And we're like, okay, now I've had 100 lifetimes. Now I want things to make sense emotionally. This is where you might try therapy or support groups. Now you get up at, 8th, 9th, 10th grade, right? 12th grade is like Gandhi and Buddha and Jesus. But we get up into the high school where we've had several hundred lifetimes. That's where your listeners are. That's where you are. Your steam. You're vibrating at a higher frequency. So your molecules are literally further apart. You're energetically more sensitive. right? So a lot of Western meds are going to feel like, you killed a fly with a sledgehammer, right? You got the job done, but you did all this collateral damage to the floor in the meantime. So you recognizing, wow, I am different than a lot of people. It's not better or worse. It's just different.
Yeah.
Because you've been a first grader and a third grader and a fifth grader. And now if you're a ninth grader, a lot of that stuff, it just doesn't feel right for you anymore. It's not an energetic match. And so you can vibrate much higher and you're much more energetically sensitive.
Mm.
And so when you're around certain people that are vibrating lower and that are denser, they're hanging out in the bar, to use your example. They're thinking it's great because a little bit of alcohol made them feel better. They're all good.
Yeah.
And you and I walked in and we both looked like it was like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, how long can I do this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's just so much. And that energy and intensity is all about helping people to numb out.
Yeah.
Where if you're an energetically sensitive person, we're on the opposite end of the spectrum. There is no numbing out when you're that open. Right? So now it's just intensity hitting you, waves of intensity. And you can only do that for a short period of time before you start to shut down. And you described it as closing in on yourself, but you start trying to close your energy field off. But you're only going to be so successful because this is who you are, right?
Yeah.
This expanded being. So as soon as we walked in there, I shielded myself energetically. Cleansed myself of anybody's energy that wasn't mine, right? I started doing these practices through the whole walk home, back in the hotel. And then somebody noticed me moving my hands in a way. She's like, "Are you clearing yourself? Can you do that for me?" And I'm like, and then all of a sudden there was the line of people that I was clearing because you can feel that difference. And
yeah, it was amazing.
I actually have a monthly class that I just started last month to teach people how to clear their energy field, how to shield themselves, because I wish we'd all been taught that in elementary school.
Oh, so good. Yes.
Just like, here's how you take care of your energy because it's going to affect your mood, your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical health.
Now, if someone is, let's just say, in fifth grade, sixth grade, just to use your analogy, which I think is brilliant because we can understand that, but they are listening to this podcast and maybe it's like they're about to graduate or evolve, maybe even in this life, because Lord knows we can choose the timelines right now. Things are pretty tricky out there. Let's say they are truly like at 50 lives. Can they still reign supreme over their energetic field without even necessarily knowing that they believe in it?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, my joke when I first started doing this work, as a lawyer, you just say you're a lawyer and everybody goes, okay, she's smart. Oh, and she went to a top law school. She's super smart, right? So it sort of spoke for me. And then when I told people, well, I'm a medical intuitive and a soul channel, they're like, first of all, what is that? And were you doing, was your job doing nails last week? Right. I mean, it was just like, who knows what kind of qualifications this person has.
So true.
And they would say, well, like, does it bother you when people don't believe in what you do? And I'd say, no, because you know what happens to people who don't believe in gravity? They stick to the earth anyway. It doesn't matter. Like, I just kind of go, okay, you don't believe, right? And then sure enough, those are the people who come back later. Well, I have a frozen shoulder and I put energy in and all of a sudden they can move their shoulder and they're like, okay, tell me more, right? I don't have a need for anybody to believe. And I also don't have a need for anybody to notice what's happening in their energy field. They'll start feeling it emotionally, just like you when your spirit was like, go get help. Just go over there and ask for it, right? Yep. People will be drawn to it when they have the capability to do it.
Okay.
So your question really is like, well, what if they're a fifth grader? And I'm like, they wouldn't be because this wouldn't resonate for them.
Got it.
But if they're a sixth or seventh grader, and we call those cuspers, right, where they're on the edge of going up to the next grade level, they might be drawn to it because they're like, every time I spend time around my family of origin, which by the way, a lot of these bright light, older souls, there's only so many families you can be born into, and there aren't a lot of old soul families. So a lot of people have that experience of families that are denser vibrating than they are. And they're the odd duck. They're the weird one, right? So that experience of, well, I'm not sure where I fit. If you're noticing feeling compromised at times energetically, it kind of lets you know you've had a couple hundred lifetimes. You're ready for this work.
Okay, this is so good. Thank you. There's something else that you shared with me that we're actually going to share in the show notes as well. It's about a 6-minute guided meditation from you. Do you remember the name of it? You probably do. I listened to it this morning. I'm going to share my story about that right now, but
okay.
Let me
so
go back.
The guided meditation is helping you get a message from your symptoms. And the reason that I made this, is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, uncovering the messages within symptoms is so good. Yes. And that'll be free. And we're going to link to that. And I want everyone to listen every day if you can, and then go take your class, which we'll talk about later. But You want to share about that, and then I'll share my experience with it, because
Yeah.
I was pretty blown away at how it I was immediately communicated with in a subtle whisper, but I knew it was truth, and I was like, oh, so like today, I mean, I'm just hydrating, which I'll explain in a second why I'm doing that. Yeah.
So I made this guided meditation because what I've learned from 26 years of working as a soul channel and a medical intuitive is that people are tend to be at war with their body in Western medicine. That's kind of our culture, right? You don't like that symptom? Take this pill, it'll suppress it, right? Just put it in the emotion crusher and push it down and it'll go away. And and so we're taught to sort of be at war with our body and force it to do what we want it to do. And what
Mm.
my spirit and all of my clients' spirits have helped me understand is that we're supposed to be in partnership with our body. And it's sort
Mm.
of like the old timey bulletin board where your spirit will tack up messages for you. Hey, by the way, that relationship that feels kind of heavy, it's heavy for a reason. Hey, you know that one where you kind of get a little wobble in your stomach when you talk to that person? There's a reason for that, right? So those messages, if left unpicked up, right, uncollected, will become symptoms.
Of
So
course.
everything, you can think of everything as starting in your central nervous system as that little wobble, right? This doesn't feel quite right. This doesn't feel so comfortable. And then we kind of ignore it because we're going along to get along, right? And we don't want to interrupt the conversation and be too much or inconvenient. And and then it becomes a little more of a wobble and we kind of push it off to the side. And then it lodges somewhere in the body as like where it registers.
Mm.
Frequently has to do with the topic that it related to.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so the different areas of the body kind of be a map of topics in that way. But then it becomes that physical symptom as a way of saying, by the way, you should go clean that up for yourself. You should go
Mm.
honor yourself about what was true for you in that moment.
Mm.
Right. And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, you're not eating enough fresh fruits and vegetables, right? It doesn't always have to be about a relationship or a job or but it is your spirit's way of giving you guidance. One of the ways that she talks to you or he talks to you
Mm-hmm.
is through emotion, right?
Mm.
Feelings are the language of the soul. And when we don't acknowledge those or act on those or take the time to really sit and be with them, then it turns into more physicality because we do give ourselves permission to notice if there's a physical thing that has to be taken care of.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. Thank you for that. And it makes so much sense. But what's cool is that you're empowering us to remember that we are eighth, ninth graders, right? And that
Yes.
we have the capacity to know ourselves in this way. And it's a little newer, you know. I think what I love about your work and the book that you have coming out, which probably will be next year, right? 25.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
hang on and wait. But I want everyone to like gobble you up what they can now in the meantime. And it's because you're literally teaching us self-healing.
Yes.
You're
In the
and it's
truest sense,
in the
right?
multidimensional capacity, right? Like not
Yes.
just the physical vessel, but like our spirit, soul, ego, higher self, like all of it goes together and all of it belongs so that I
Yes.
feel whole in a way where I didn't even know that wholeness could be felt in this way,
Yes.
right?
What you know the newer cars that have those it beeps when you go out of your lane?
Mm-hmm.
Think of your body that way. When you get a
Mm,
symptom, it's going beep, 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 beep. You need to course correct in some way.
yeah.
And it could just be you need sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be, you know, your boss is really crossing a lot of boundaries, asking you to work every night, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's some way that your body is signaling to you, we need a little course correction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So I'll give a little context to how this helped me, this particular guided meditation that we're going to share, uncovering the messages within symptoms. Um, I started to feel like I was getting sick about 3 days ago, if I recall correctly, 2.5 days ago. And it was, now that I really connect the dots, it was after a pretty hard conversation on a Zoom with someone I'm in business with. And it doesn't feel the way we'd probably both love for it to feel right now. We're just in one of
Right.
those seasons of trying to figure things out and alchemize what we can. And, um, and then that night, I was like, oh man, I'm going down. And normally I don't get sick. So I can usually nip it with chlorine dioxide or ivermectin or all the things that I use in my arsenal or homeopathic
Right.
stuff or whatever. And the headache was getting worse, migraine. And then yesterday the headache was all day. And then last night I was like, oh my God, I'm going out of town Thursday night. I got to wrap up this launch, like all the pressure, right? And it was also the fourth launch and then TLC. It was just a big, 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 like 4 weeks. And
Yeah.
so this morning, it was like 6 a.m., wasn't even light out. And my spirit said, go get Christine's guided meditation because I hadn't heard it yet. And
Okay.
so I did, and I played it in my dark bedroom on speaker. And the message that came through was, and I know there's more, but you're dehydrated and you're very, very tired. So just, it's like you're not getting sick. Don't worry. And
Yeah.
then I shared with you in a text, this is what happened. And you're like, yeah, there's also a little bit more going on. So if you're okay with it, and then you shared with me later what you saw. And I was like, it was the conversation. It was this person that it's just feeling heavy right now. Right. But isn't it wild how much we can dismiss or deny what our body's trying to express to us? Like, hey, this is out of balance.
Yeah, like your body's always saying, "Hey, I could help. Hey, I could help. I could help you clue in." And like for you, I can hear your spirit right now. Sorry, I'm assuming I have your permission.
Okay. Yes, yes.
I can hear your spirit saying you're emotionally weary. So she wants to be
Mm.
more specific about tired. Yes, your body is giving you the message you're tired, but it's beyond needing physical sleep.
Yes, yeah. Oh,
When
I'm
you
getting nine
understand that
hours a
you're,
night. It's emotional and spiritual, to
yeah.
be honest. It's a spiritual exhaustion.
Well, and what I would say is it's I don't mean to make you wrong, but really there isn't such a thing of spiritual exhaustion. There is mental exhaustion and emotional exhaustion. And the mental comes when we don't understand what we're supposed to be doing spiritually,
There we
right? And
go.
then it
That's
gets
it.
labeled as
Yes.
spiritual exhaustion, and people's spirits go, "That's not right.
That was
I'm
like
tired, right?"
$1,000 session right there. Like that was so worth it. But that's exactly what it was. And then like today, literally, I think when I just hit the threshold of like, I'm done being confused. Like I'm doing deep work and you know what I mean? It's like, I know there's something else calling me forward. And it's like, come on, please tell me, please show me.
Right.
And literally today, after your meditation, and then I did another podcast, I was like, I got it. And
Yeah.
it's what you and I talked about before. And I'm going to wait because I want to unveil some really cool
Yeah.
offerings. But I'm like, right when I was like, I feel exhausted. What more do I, I was like, and it was like, then the clarity came anyway. So that's what it was. It was like, she's just weary, and also the state of the world, and being a leader and being very out there in this space. And I know you get it because this is your world too. Like,
Yeah.
we need to know that we're not here to take care of everyone. It's not my job to fix anyone or to heal anyone. We can't.
Right.
But it's like just to offer as much as I can and then to let it go and let God.
My spirit has a saying for me where she's like, "Stay in your swim lane." And she
Mm-hmm.
said, "I will try to make my, a picture like an Olympic pool with all those lanes." And she's like, "You'll keep trying to make your lane wider and wider to take care of all the people you care about."
Mm-hmm.
And you're putting these other people in your swim lane, but then energetically you're carrying them on your shoulders. And then you get
Mm-hmm.
really exhausted really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many women, we were raised to be the nurturers. And so it's really hard to know where that line is energetically.
Mm-hmm.
And so when a new client comes to me and it's for something medical, I always say, "Send me a photo and 2 sentences about your symptom," because I always say, ask, "Do I have a role to play?" And if I hear no, they do better with an acupuncturist, I will be honest and tell a person. But I've adopted that into the whole rest of my life. So somebody tells me about, this cause or that cause or this person that really needs to break up with their boyfriend. And I just feel into the center of my chest, do I have a role to play in this? And it's amazing how often I hear no. But I could get distracted with that, thinking, "Oh, well, if I'm a really good friend, I'll help her save herself from that jerk of a boyfriend," or whatever that thing is where I spread my energy out in all these different directions. And then I wonder why my projects that I care about aren't going forward fast enough because my energy is so diluted with all these people
Oh,
I quote care about.
yeah, that's a really important message for quite a few people that I know. Can you say that even in a different way? I
Yeah.
wonder why my own projects aren't flourishing, and it's because my energy is so diluted and or distracted, right? Dispersed. But can you just even say it another way? Because
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
someone in
So think
particular I'm
of
going to
it
say,
as
listen to this section.
think about it as if you got, just for simplicity's sake, 100 units of energy gets given to you a day. And if 40 of those units of energy are utilized, for your kids, for your pets, for your friend, for your neighbor, because you're always monitoring if he puts his trash cans on your side of the driveway, or all these silly little things where think of it as you're giving pieces of your power away, your energy that can be moving your locomotive forward for your
Mm.
projects, your passions forward. It gets so diluted and so spread out that sometimes when I look at people's energy, it just looks like you're pouring water on a tabletop. It just goes in every direction at once. And of course, nothing's moving forward. It's
Mm.
way too diluted. And
Mm.
so what I start asking those clients is start recalling your energy. I'll have them close their eyes and I'm like, think of people that you sent your energy out to where you're more invested than they are in the result. And we always have a bunch of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start pulling that energy back like a retractable vacuum cleaner cord. Just pull it back, pull it back. And people usually take a deep breath when they start getting more of their own capacity back
So
because they're
good.
calling their energy home.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
making more conscious decisions about, is this where I want to invest my energy? And is it what I'm being asked to do, or what I
Mm-hmm.
just think I should do to be the good wife, girlfriend, neighbor, daughter?
Yes, so good. And then I imagine that also would work for another scenario, well, many, but like where we're kind of looping and playing the scene over and over and over again in
Yes.
our mind. So in other words, we're hooked in someone else's field. And it's like,
Right.
take it back, right? Like I recently had to do this in a particular dynamic that I was in.
Mhm.
And I was like, wait, they're not even aware that I'm looping. Like just
Right.
unhook from them. And I mean, literally just the idea of that allowed me to then call my energy back. And I was no longer feeding that. They never knew what happened. We continue and go on as life is normal. But now I'm
Yep.
back in my authentic power.
Well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the unhealed places in us from childhood,
Yeah.
or where we get triggered. And I was in session the other day, and this client, her spirit gave her this brilliant visual of a fish hook just floating by in the water. She's like, "Are you going to just go out and bite that because you're just so used to doing it? Because your mom always made you responsible every time she was unhappy. So now your daughter's unhappy, and you want to jump in there and convince her why she needs to do it a certain way, why it isn't your fault that
Mm-hmm.
she's unhappy. That's just an old pattern playing out, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can see the fish hook. You don't have to take that bait,
Okay, I have
right?
a question that might be on a
Okay.
personal level, and this is just a funny thing I can't even believe I'm going to ask. Um, oh, this is really tricky waters. Um, I have been advised that I did not take the advice to dumb down what I say because the average bear cannot relate. Maybe this person couldn't relate. I don't know. But this person's also like by title, a master coach in a really big organization, like fancy
Right.
schmancy titles and
Right.
visibility and power and influence, right? So there's all of that. And my friend means well, trying to do right by
Mhm.
me, but like no one understands what you're actually saying. So you just want to dumb it down and speak in like, 5-year-old terms. I didn't
Right.
follow that advice, but I guess my question, and my last year, my business was stronger and better than it had been in years. And so I was like, okay, we're going to survive. We're going to make
Right.
it to this awakening. Like, all right, I don't have to go, live with my mom forever. But because I didn't know at the time, it was just like, okay, I don't fit into what it once was, but I don't know what's coming. And we're kind of still in that space on some way. And I know a lot of us feel that way. But my
Yeah.
question is it possible to, because I'm kind of convinced now that like 90% of my old community from
Mhm.
2.5+ years ago, they might not ever want what I'm throwing down. But is it
Right.
possible to elevate them energetically? Or is that, again, one of those, that's not my business? Don't even think about it. If I just continue to embody the truth that wants to come through and be expressed as me, those who are meant to find it will, and those who aren't won't, and just let go of any thoughts that it needs to
Right.
be any different. That's really how I've been operating. But I'm just curious, is there anything to do that would open up maybe some of the dense cracks of maybe the fifth graders?
Okay.
Or is that
So
just
your spirit, I'm
ridiculous?
I'm going to interrupt you because your spirit is already talking, and I'm trying to listen to
Good,
both of you at the same
good,
time.
good, good, good.
So what your spirit said is you have an old pattern of wanting to bring everybody along, whether it's everybody in your family, everybody you love. She's like, that's who you are. Like, that's the Michelle ways. If you love them, bring them all along because you feel bad if somebody's left out. It's very
Always.
heart-based and very sweet, but she's like, that's who you've always been. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what she said is you're still trying to do that now, and it doesn't make sense. If you, let's say you're a 10th grader, right? So somebody comes to you who's in 7th or 8th grade, who's made a lot of money doing that, like you say, who's this master teacher and coach, and says, hey, come speak at the 5th grade level because you can help those 5th graders become 6th graders. And there's more of them than there are 9th graders. So you'll make more money, you'll have more mass appeal. But it feels like a wobble because you're not being loyal to yourself to do that. You're
Yeah.
betraying yourself. And your spirit said, what he hooked into for you was that old pattern of take everybody along that you can, or as many people as you can.
Yep.
And so one of my guides is reminding me, I did a retreat recently and I was channeling in front of this large group, and somebody asked the question, and all these guides came in that were very high above their spirits. And one of the questions was, do we have to reach some sort of critical mass where the older souls, there's enough of us that are awakened that it sort of tips the scales? And they said, that's a very linear 3D way of thinking of it. And they said, we want you to think of it as an upward spiral. There are more awakened people now than ever before on this planet, but there are also more old souls than ever who are starting to awaken. And they said, think of it in terms of waves. So you'll get a wave here.
Yeah.
And then it inspires all these other groups, and they produce big waves and big arcs of waves in this spiral, which fuels the whole upward spiral. So there isn't a critical mass tipping point. It is this whole thing that's already moving up, and it's be responsible for the wave that you came here to inspire.
That I'm riding, ride the cosmic wave.
You ride it like a surfer, for sure. But when when I'm working with a whole group and I raise the vibration really high, I will say to them, ride the wave. Right. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I get messages from my spirit, or I can feel this, or I know what is true for me. And it's like, the more people that you awaken in that way, then they go out and do that somewhere else. So your spirit is saying it's less about the numbers and more about doing what you came here to do and who you came here to be.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to be loyal to that. And then the rewards will always follow, because the greatest reward is that sense of fulfillment and a knowing of resonance.
Yes. The resonance with my soul.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And this is where, like, when people say, like, what do you want? Like, what's your vision? What's your big, like, dream for the future? I'm like, I want to be right with God. That's it.
Yep.
Honest to God. Like, I want to be living more of a dharmic way of being than a karmic way of being. Right. I feel like I've done so much of that, and I've learned through so much fire. And I've enjoyed that also, because I didn't know it was fiery until I realized there was a whole other way called grace.
But your spirit has just jumped in and said that now, because of where you are, karma takes on a different meaning. So I want to ask her what she means by that. Okay.
Yes,
so let's just see.
Oh, this is fun. I didn't know we were going to
be channeling.
I know, this is so great. Oh, she's got some things to say. Okay.
So she's saying that karma now means for you what she calls immediate contracts, meaning people she's drawing into now based on how high a vibration you've achieved within the last day or week or month or year. So they're ongoing karmic contracts based on your awakening and other people's awakening. And each of us got to this level at this same point. So now our souls create these more instantaneous and immediate karmic contracts. And it might be like you and I, how our paths cross, right? And then it might be that you outgrow a karmic connection within a week or a day.
Right? My spirit's so good and so wise, because in the last 2.5 years, this same timeline, I have had these really strong connections, and they have definitely been karmic, and it's just like I grew the most, I expanded and evolved the most. And then when it was complete, it was complete. And there's no hard feelings. It's not like it had to end in drama. It was just like, we're good. Right. And so, yes. And now I'm watching them coming in even quicker. There's a male in my life right now. And I'm like, I don't feel like that might be real future. In fact, we can ask my spirit right now. He feels a little, I don't want to say anything, but
what your spirit says about that, because we're not going to out anybody on your show, but she said there's one element that he's modeling for you that she wants you to include in your creation. When you put out to the universe what I want, there's one sliver he's bringing in that you hadn't thought to consider, and she wanted you to notice it.
Yeah, it's yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you for that. That's so good. Oh my God, I it's so funny.
But so now you thank him for that, and you're like, thank you for bringing me that. And then sometimes what I'll do is I'll put that person, a visual of them in a hot air balloon, and they just drift out of my experience. And then you don't have to have any conflicts. They just get carried away, right? They just lose interest in you. They forget about you, whatever. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that. I feel a little selfish that I've kind of, spent some time on me, and I don't typically do that these days on the show, but thank you for your generosity, and thank you to my spirit for jumping in and making herself be heard. That is so cool. I love getting to know myself in a multidimensional capacity. It is so beautiful, and it's so expansive and exhilarating, right? And what it does for me, Christine, is it takes away any fear around death. in the physical sense, right? And I'm like,
Absolutely.
oh, we're having a party, right? Beyond this life or beyond this physical vessel. I want to care for this vessel. I want to treat her well and live as vibrantly as possible. But it really just really makes it so poignant that there's so much more beyond the veil.
Yeah, this vessel is just the car you were given to drive in to get you to where you want to go, right? So you want to have all these experiences in this lifetime of awakening this many people through your show, of touching this many people's hearts in these different ways through your podcast, through your shows, through all your offerings. And that body is what allows you to do that. Right.
Exactly.
And so then there's that like, oh, well, I want to take good care of my car and everything. And not that your body should be like a car, but it's this idea of taking care of that which serves you. And your body
Yeah.
is there to serve you.
Well, it's so beautiful that you say that. And I imagine that my spirit wants to chime in right now. But back on June 15th, I got COVID. I think I got COVID. I tested as a positive, but these tests, they're a little tricky. And
Yeah.
but I got it for a very specific reason. It was to completely surrender me physically so that I would finally and for all quit the smoking that I was still doing at night in secrecy,
Ah,
which is
yes.
also a barrier of intimacy and all the things, right? And I'd been doing
Yes.
that on and off, mostly on since I was about 14, 15 years old, 14. So anyway, but at that time, my soul showed up through the soles of my feet, and it looked almost like lightning in the sky that was all kind of frenetic,
Yeah.
and it begged me to quit smoking. And I was literally with tears streaming down my face, like, do I really have to? I mean, I was so sick, chills, sweats, shaking, and still like, do I have to? That's how much I was still
Addicted.
relying on that for my coping, right? Which I didn't even know it was coping. I was like, doesn't alter the mind.
Right.
And my soul then took on like a beautiful, flowy, like almost coagulated form, like billowy cloud almost. And it just like,
Oh,
and then it was clear to me that like, I can't do what I came here to do because my soul needs to be in a vessel that's healthy. And the soul
that-
emanates the body. And so can you listen, you get to choose. You don't have to quit smoking, but if you want to do what you came here to do when your time is now, like it's
right.
now. You've been preparing for this is when it really happens. Do you want it? And I was
Right.
just like, okay. And I haven't since, and I never will because I know it was my soul. So for those who are still thinking that you can get away with harming your body in the ways that we do. And I get it, life is hard, but there's other ways to cope. And that's what Christine can help you with. But did anything come through on that as I was sharing that
Yeah.
story?
So your spirit said that she wants you to understand that it wasn't a judgment of you,
Yeah.
right? When she was saying you need to do this, she said that she wanted you to understand that when you smoke, you're also shutting down your heart chakra a little bit.
Yeah.
So it feels like a type of protection and soothing, but it really is feeling like a little bit of insulation or barrier.
Yeah.
And that so some people say, oh, smoking is a sign of self-hatred, self-loathing, lack of self-love. And I sometimes, but I really think it more often is just saying, I don't feel safe, so I'm going to close down my heart chakra.
That was me.
So for someone like you who walks around wide open all day long, right? Not realizing you're like a little firecracker sparkler, right? All these little emanating light beams coming off of you. Of course, people are drawn to that because it's not what they have, right? So that
Right.
weighs you down and you're picking up other people's energy all the time and you didn't know how at that time to clear yourself from it. So by the end of the day, you do want to close up a little bit and be protective. And that cigarette is that reassuring thing. Don't worry, I've got you. We'll close you off a little bit.
Yeah, and that's just amazing too, because it was always in the night and it would be like 3, 4, sometimes more in a row. And like just chain. And it usually would be after I close up my laptop. I don't, again, haven't since June 15th. And I can't imagine I will again in this life because I'm just too awake, but which I'm
Right.
so grateful for to be done with that. But I'd close up my laptop from leading groups. And I hadn't yet fully been aware of just how much I leak or I'm available, not leak, but be available for, right? Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And so I was like, either eat a bunch of ice cream or go smoke a bunch of cigarettes. And so I was like, finally like, oh, that's what that was. And so, yeah, just becoming more mindful of how we feel. What are we feeling? Yes. How can we start to measure?
So here's another way to think of it. My spirit gave me this analogy a long time ago. If you walk through a smoky bar and you carry 3 things, and the first thing is a piece of metal, And the second thing is a piece of wood. And the third thing is a piece of tissue paper. And you just walk through the smoky bar and you come outside. The metal doesn't smell at all like cigarette smoke. And the wood, maybe a tiny bit. And the tissue paper stinks.
Yeah.
If you're an older soul, you're tissue paper. You're porous and you're meant to be. Things are supposed to move through you. You're supposed to have the ability to adapt quickly and light up and move a lot of energy through you. So a denser physical body doesn't serve you, but you are more energetically sensitive. So people who grew up being told you're too much usually are very energetically sensitive. And that radiance was a lot for people. Yeah. So they taught them to dim it down, just like this well-meaning friend of yours saying, dim it down.
Yeah.
Appeal to the masses. Piece of wood's just pretty. It's not in the way. This tissue paper is kind of fluttering in the breeze, right? And so, but to see yourself as that porous. I always say to some of my teenage clients, like, think of yourself like a giant sea sponge. What are you absorbing when you go to high school? And they're like, oh God, everybody's insecurities, right? So we teach them to kind of armor up, shield up so that you're not picking up, and how to cleanse your energy. And that's why I started teaching the monthly classes. Like, I need to make this so automatic for people. And we have to talk about it every month. Like, here's how you would clear. If you're going to the DMV, how do you want to protect yourself? If you forget to shield yourself, how do you cleanse yourself when you get home from a family dinner, right? All those different things till you just do it time and time again. So it becomes more second nature to just practice this good energy hygiene. So you get to vibrate higher all the time and live as your more authentic self.
So good. Even just you saying it, like, I'm in such full resonance of just like, I just was like, yes, I want to be fully intact. I want to be in my power, and I want to be clear and connected. And that's, I think, the most important thing. And especially as we all know, 2024 is just the beginning of a lot of acceleration, a lot of intensification, and on so many levels, I'm excited by this. It's like, I'm awed by this. Like, we're here for maybe the biggest shift in the evolution of human consciousness.
Oh, for sure.
Right? Like, yes. I mean, do you ever experience any fear? Are you excited? Do you kind of balance both? Like,
I don't have any fear, because I have never experienced so many awake people and energetically sensitive people coming to me at once, that when I'm teaching them to do energy healing and try to hear their spirit and get messages at the same time, I'm having people that used to take 3 or 4 months to get a message from their spirit. And now in 3 or 4 days, they're getting a message from their spirit. I'm like, these people all just didn't get brilliant, right? It's that population as a whole. We're in one of those swells, those waves up. That's just we're just going to keep riding it. Right. And so to me, it's all good. It can only be all good. Right. It's so beneficial for us. And I just want to ride the wave. And if it doesn't, and I always taught my kids, if it feels bad, it is bad. Meaning, if it feels heavy, back away until you get clarity. And the first thing you do is clear everybody else's energy off you. So, because that's like static on the line, interfering with your connection with your spirit.
Okay. Let me see if I got this correct. If I'm feeling heavy or dense or just kind of bogged down energetically, and I'm like, but all is well, like the bills are paid, the roof is over my head, got food in tummy. Why do I feel sad or down or whatever? All right, clear my energy. Start there, right? Just being aware of like, okay, where have I been recently? What have I absorbed recently? What have I ingested, either mentally, emotionally, physically, all of those things. Is that fair?
Yes, yes.
And then
driving is one of the things where I pick up a lot of frustration and angst and anxiety from people when we're driving. Yeah. So I always put myself in a protective bubble, and I just ask, please shield me from any energy that is not healthy for me.
That's perfect. That's what I was just going to ask you as we begin to close. Like, what could we try on? So that's it right there.
Yep. Please shield me from any energy that's not healthy for me.
Easy enough. Right? Please shield me from any energy that is not healthy for me. And we can do that before we get in the car. We can do that before we get on an airplane. We can do that before we walk into the DMV, a hospital, an office building, a concert studio. I mean, I think about like the Super Bowl this weekend. I'm like, so much energy, right? Exactly. You and I are so. But
I want to point to too something else that when you said that after a class you're teaching, because it can also happen over Zoom. You don't pick up as much energy as if you're in front of somebody, but you still pick up energy. So if you're in front of a whole class and they're counting on you to be brilliant and inspiring, they're sort of offering a trade. Like, Michelle feeds us the good, high, light, vibrational energy. And then we kind of hand her back the stuff that's like, but what about this worry? But what about this fear I have? But what about this limiting belief? And your job is to sort of be the transformer of those things and help them. But you don't realize how much you kind of walk away with like their litter all in your energy field.
So good. And I don't know if you just could feel this, but I literally just put the wall between us because you taught me how to do that before, which I
Yep.
imagine you will teach in classes. So I'm not going to, I want people to find out how to do that through you.
Yeah.
But yeah, right. Like you were like, okay, I'm going to open my heart to you and I want you to see if you can feel it. And then I'm going to close. I'm going to put like a clear glass almost like between us.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, she's closed off. And then you're like, okay, now you do it. And so then I got to try on both, but I also got to experience what it's like to feel what it feels like to know that I'm protected, to know that
Right.
I have put either a barrier. Again, I can still give, but I'm just not open to receiving unless I want it. So again,
Right.
please shield
Right.
me from any energy that is not healthy.
Yeah. And as somebody who's coming to complain or who's negative, even if they're just telling you about complaining about the news, right? They're not even complaining about you per se, but it's like, it doesn't help me to take that on for them. It doesn't lighten
Mm-mm.
their load at all. And it's just kind of polluting my energy field. So I can just imagine dropping a sheet of glass between us. I'm saying the same words. I'm radiating my light out to them because I want them to feel it like sunlight. They don't even know the difference. You knew the difference. One, you're energetically sensitive, but two, I said, I'm going to drop a sheet of glass. And you were like, whoa, I just felt that. But if I got on the Zoom that way, or if while you're in the middle of a rant about how awful politicians are, I did that, you wouldn't have even noticed because you would have been busy ranting, right? So people can,
Right.
I teach my clients to do it all the time, and their family, their friends, their coworkers, they never even know. But then they feel safe.
And that's it, is like my whole intention right now with Fire and Soul and everything I do is helping all of us awaken to our own divine power, whatever that remembrance is for each of us. It's going to be different depending on how many lives we've had and where we are on that sort of trajectory of, grade school all the way up to senior. And that, I love that analogy, by the way. Are you putting that in the book? Because it's so good. It's so easy to understand because then I'm not judging and there's no hierarchy, right? There's no more
Right.
divisiveness or separation on anyone, especially my family, right? And
Yeah.
and some of them are probably beyond me, to be honest, but like I keep expecting to fit a round hole in a square peg. And it's like,
But
no, they're not meant to.
if you go back to that analogy, and let's say you're in 10th grade and you have a cousin who you think is wonderful and she's lovely and you just want to introduce her to stuff, and she's in 4th grade, and you
Yeah.
go to her and you say, we're going to use a math analogy, even though math is not my specialty, but you go to her and you say, I want to teach you calculus. Did you know you could do math with numbers and symbols like square? And she looks at you and goes, are you insane? We just learned our times tables and I know you have to use numbers. You're not going to be able to convince her. She's not going to be able to convince you, but you're going to torture each other as you try to, quote, save her by introducing her to calculus, which you think is going to liberate her, but she's
Mhm.
not ready for it. So it's just going to confuse her. Right.
Gotcha.
And when you were in 4th grade, if I'd met you and tried to convince you that you should do calculus, it would have just messed with your head. Right. So
Mhm.
it's the appropriateness of no judgment. There's
Yeah.
people that are right behind you and you're modeling the way for them. And you're going to meet people who are ahead of you and they're going to model the way for you. And that's that wave, that crest, right?
Okay, I have a follow-up, and I know
Okay.
we're at time. The follow-up is this. I'm just so excited by this conversation. Is it seems to me that the responsibility, the accountability on just for the betterment of all of humanity would be on
Mhm.
the one that needs to be aware. Okay, I might be in 10th grade, let's just say. They're
Right.
not. So how
Right.
can I attune to where they are without making them feel bad about what they are not meant to know in this life, right? Like,
Your spirit is saying, feel for areas of common resonance.
yes,
Doesn't
of
just mean the
course.
topics you agree on. It means when you start to talk about something and you feel that person kind of sigh into it, right? It's like,
Mm,
oh, that's a thing that is easy and comfortable for us to both talk about. Neither of us is betraying ourselves. I'm not denying that calculus exists. I'm not asking her to deny that, math should be done with numbers. Here's something that we can connect on, right? So I will connect with people on pets, on hiking and loving nature. It's kind of hard to take a stance against those things, right? And it's something that I can be in support of that person, they can be in support of me.
mhm,
And we're finding those areas of resonance because all humans have areas of resonance, right? So it's just
mhm.
once you know that's your goal, now you're not trying to be the people pleaser and you're not trying to just suppress yourself or play it small. You're using your wisdom to
Yeah.
feel for areas of resonance. And
Mm.
I will be standing in front of somebody at a cocktail party, and I'm thinking, oh God, I have nothing in common with this guy. He sells cars, and I could care less about cars or whatever. And my spirit will drop in, ask him about his son, and ask him about his son
Mm.
playing sports. And I'll be like, oh, do you have kids? Do you have a son? My son played a lot of sports, and all of a sudden his whole body lights up because his son just got drafted into the MLB, and right, and he walks away with this positive remembrance of that interaction. And we stayed real clear about from what I did, because he was not going to be open to that. Right. So finding those areas of resonance when that's your goal, your spirit can help you do that.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And it reminds me of something that I just did recently. There's a bunch of us that go to the dog park every single night, 5, 6 nights a week. There's like 12 of us, and our dogs, everyone's off leash, and it's in Calabasas, which you know, and so it's very safe. And it's amazing that they have this beautiful park that's not a dog park, but we treat it like a dog park. But there's this one woman who she eye contact would be way too much for her in any conversation with anyone, I think even her husband. And there's a whole bunch of married couples, so no one will ever know who I'm talking about. But like, my point is that I was like, why doesn't she talk to me? Why doesn't she like me? And I was like, because I'm so direct. Like, I'm just going to come right in and like expect you to be comfortable with that.
Right.
And so what I heard about 6 months ago was talk to her, but don't face her. And don't ever try to have eye contact with her, but just find the common ground, right? And so before, I'm getting the chills as I say it, which is always my team, just like, yes, that's right.
Yes.
And so I could feel her opening and relaxing with me. She still doesn't have a whole ton of eye contact with me, but I completely shifted that anything was happening between us. Nothing was.
Right.
She just wasn't comfortable in that sort of communication style with anyone. And so, but ego had to take a step back, because I was like, no, she's going to do eye contact with me. That was me being attached to an outcome of how she needed to be. And I was like, no, meet her where she is, because that will help the whole group feel more connected, and we will all feel better together, right? Instead of me creating a little story that somehow she doesn't like me or won't talk to me. And it was like, it wasn't true at all. She just wasn't comfortable with how direct I can be.
Yes. So as soon as you said that you basically commandeered this dog park, which, by the way, when I lived in Agora Hills, we did the same thing to an elementary school. So we created our own dog park. And so as soon as you started talking about that, your spirit said to me, the person had a lot of trauma and childhood abuse. And she sees eye contact as a direct threat. And what she said to you is, when something doesn't make sense to you, right? When your ego mind goes, she should look at me, she should do this. She said, ask your spirit, ask your heart, what would compassion do right now? And she said, that will give you the answer, because compassion would seek to make her comfortable and feel included, even though it's hard for her to do it.
Yeah. So compassion has been the medicine that keeps showing up that I am supposed to take and ingest regularly. So thank you for that, because that feels like the most important thing I was supposed to hear today, because I can feel it. And which is another reason I'm not smoking. So my heart actually has the possibility to be open and full of compassion. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and now you have a different way of protecting yourself and dealing with what you pick up energetically.
Yeah.
And smoking really was a balm for you in that way.
I know.
So instead of making yourself wrong, if I knew it was wrong and I did it all these years, I would say that was the coping tool I had. And not a coincidence that within a few weeks of you giving up one, the better, higher version of a coping tool comes into you. Right? The universe loves to provide for that way, because that was your act of faith to say, okay, out of compassion for my body that's trying to take care of me, I'm going to give up smoking. And then the universe says, by the way, here's a better tool.
What is the better tool that you're talking about?
Shielding your energy and cleansing yourself.
I see. Yes. Oh, yes. But 6 months later, but yes. I was like, yes. Okay. Yes. 6 months later. Well, 7 months later. Yeah. But I already knew, like, it was so funny. I was like, who's going to be the person that teaches me this? Yeah. And I was like waiting but I'll tell you, I went through a whole 6 months, June to the end of December. I had to reconcile and reclaim every adolescent feeling and emotion and a need that went unnoticed and unacknowledged, because I would just smoke it away. So all those really weird growing pains and feeling like you don't belong and body dysmorphia and all that, it didn't get a chance to actually really ever express or be integrated, not fully, of course not. So I was like finding myself in these most immature conversations with women friends. And I was like, whoa, it's because my 14-year-old was running the show, because she finally had a chance to express. And then by the turn of the year, I mean, this is so honest, but whatever, I'm honest on this show. By the turn of the year, I was like, that's complete. There's going to be other things for sure. I'm not a perfect human being, but man, I'm really doing the work. And I feel so proud of that, right? Like my soul, my spirit is like, okay, like we're going to do things a little differently now. So yes, this is when you show up.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the questions that I have my clients ask themselves is which version of me is showing up? And I don't mean version like, oh, the happy me, the people pleaser. I mean, what age? And is
Mm-hmm.
it future Michelle that says,
Mm-hmm.
let's invest in our body? Or
Yeah.
is it, like you said, 14-year-old Michelle? And it's not that 14-year-old Michelle is wrong. It's what did you need to hear at that time or
Yeah.
express? I'm going to do it through journaling and
Mm-hmm.
step through that stage. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can act it out in conversation with friends, but then a lot of times there's cleanup work to do afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if we can acknowledge, like, oh, what version of me is showing up, what age is getting triggered right now, journal about that, sit in meditation with that, bring that in. I mean, to me, I think of that as spiritual courage, right? When we're
Mm.
like, this isn't
I
the
love
cleanest,
that.
highest current version of me, but let me go give her what she needed, or she needed to be seen or heard or witnessed in some way. Let me go do that now as the adult version of me, so that gets healed and released.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for that.
We've gone all over the place on this, this
Yeah,
interview.
but honestly, it's really all about riding the cosmic wave,
Yeah.
right? And increasing our capacity to embody spiritual courage. It's something along those lines. This has just been so beautiful. And learning the art of self-healing, right? And or energetic hygiene.
Yeah.
So this has been just so delicious. And I know it's going to be a favorite. Is there anything as we begin to close now for reals that you wish you would have been asked or that you feel needs to be shared?
I think I would just, and probably you've said this before, other guests have, that if we start orienting our daily life to what is happening for me instead of what is happening to me,
Mhm.
then instead of getting upset, we get curious.
Mhm.
That's sort of the magic sauce, right? That's the elixir that has us turn inward and go, sometimes I go, really, spirit, that seemed like a good idea, right? But I'm saying it chuckling and going, okay, explain to me how this is good for me, because I am not getting it and I don't want to shut down, but this makes no sense to me. And that's part of what you were describing as a spiritual exhaustion, is really a mental exhaustion when you don't understand the spiritual signs.
That's it.
They're not clear enough. They're being withheld for right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so then we just kind of spin a little bit in ourselves. And so that mental weariness and emotional weariness, sometimes we just kind of ask, like, what is the best medicine for me right now? Right. And for
Mm-hmm.
emotional weariness, it's usually nature, sitting in a bathtub, because water will help infuse you with more energy and it soothes. So there's, and for mental exhaustion and mental weariness, it's usually something like reading a book that you've already read. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
comfort to you mentally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, or a sitcom that you love, right?
Mm-hmm.
People watch old episodes of, old funny TV shows from way back when, because it's soothing to them mentally.
Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. After all that hard work of the reconciling the 14-year-old and all of her emotions for 6 months over the holiday break, which I didn't really have a break, but all I wanted to do was rewatch the entire series of Ted Lasso. Because it's just so pure and innocent and just
Yes,
so
yes.
beautiful. Okay, I love that. Thank you for that. Now you mentioned this class. I think you have one coming out that in February. This will have surpassed when it actually comes out, but they can still pick it up, right?
Right. So every month I teach this class, super low price. So everybody can just drop in whenever.
Mhm.
And they're all the recorded ones are going to be put up on the website. So you can go watch them if you miss them. But it is called Your Energy Matters, because your energy really matters. Right. And
Mhm.
so, and it's all the things that matter to your energy field. And we're just going to talk about cleansing and shielding and all the different ways you can notice and protect yourself and feel clean and clear, so you can vibrate the highest and feel the best emotionally and physically all the time.
Oh, gosh, this is so needed in the world right now. I mean, absolutely needed. So I'm going to encourage everyone to pick it up. I think it's like what, 20 something bucks. I
It's
mean,
25 bucks.
yeah, it's
I
like
made it
nothing.
like Starbucks cheap, right? This is your two coffees. And because I want it to be something that's a hell yes and a no-brainer. And in the summer, I teach once a year, I teach a class on how to actually hear your spirit and all the steps. And that's a much bigger, comprehensive class. But if you get on my email list, you'll get notices of that, if that is appealing to you, and you can really feel it calling to you. And I teach energy healing and all these sorts of things. But just jump on the email list for the short class and just get a feel. It's also a gateway for people to get used to hearing me channel. Because
Yeah.
if somebody asks a question, usually before I can even answer, their spirit is answering, just like your spirit was jumping in today. And then I just can't help myself. Like, guess what your spirit is saying about that, right? But I think that chance for people, like you get those chills, right? And that is your spirit's most common way of letting you know that what happens is they wave a wave of energy through your body. So it's either going to feel like a wave, or it'll feel like chills, or it'll feel like a little shiver.
It's happening right now.
Your spirit. Yeah, it's your spirit saying yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Pay attention. That's right. And some people will tear up, and that is saying, yes, this is my deeper truth. Right? It's your spirit feeling heard. Like,
that's
yes,
what will
I'm being
happen for me
witnessed.
too. Yes, yes. That happened a couple of times today, even in our conversation. I got a little teary, and I was like, oh, this is such truth. My soul, my spirit needed this today. This has been so good. Okay. So where's the best place for anyone who's curious about learning to either do a session with you or get this Your Energy Matters class, or anything else they want to pick up from you?
So my website is christinelang.org. And everything is there. There's also guided meditations that are there for free that'll help you get messages about other things, not just body symptoms. So there's all different free resources that you can get on there too.
Okay, this has been amazing. Well, I know I'm going to be seeing you again soon, maybe in Colorado this summer, but I'm just most grateful for the fact that our spirits decided to like reunite right now at this season in our life. And you've got a book coming out next year, and with a really fancy agent and the whole thing. So what people don't realize, and I'm getting the chills as I say this, it's so beautiful. Divine tingles is what I call them, is you are about to explode, right? And you know it, you can sense it, I can sense it. And it's just so beautiful to connect with you now and here, and to nurture this friendship, this connection, and this service, this medicine that you're offering, because we'll continue to have you back as often as you are available for that.
Thank you.
And I'm honoring your journey. You know, it takes a lot of courage to listen to the calls that you heard after, I'm sure, the debt, the time, the investment, the resources. What would others think? I'm going to leave like law to go do that. And so to be here now, all these years later, and for it to be such divine timing.
Yeah.
It's right when humanity needs you most. So I want to say thank you for who you be in the world.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to witness you doing this same kind of up leveling that I feel like some days I feel like there's a fire hose pointed at my back, like shoving me into this next, expansion. And I think a lot of people feel that way. It's such a time of rapid acceleration where relationships are ending and opportunities are coming and going. And there's just a lot of intensity. So it's nice to meet a fellow traveler who's riding the same wave and trying to do it as gracefully as I am.
Girl, we got to get our sequins.
Our surfboards. Yeah.
I want some cool goggles. Oh yeah. But I can see us. Oh man. This and so much more, my friend. We are at the very beginning of a lot of magic that we get to co-create together. And I'm just so excited and grateful.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on Fire and Soul. Most grateful. Oh, so exciting. Okay.